Hi, welcome to this regular school committee meeting of today, Valentine's Day, February 14th. We're going to immediately go into executive session and then we'll be returning afterwards. So I would like a motion to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union and or non-union personnel or contract negotiations with union and or non-union in which, if held in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect, to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, in which, if held in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect. Collective bargaining may also be conducted, and is to discuss Superintendent Kathleen Bodie's contract. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Okay, and this has to be a roll call vote. Mr. Hayner?
Aye.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Schickman?
Yes.
Yes.
And I say yes. And we'll go into executive session. Thank you. Hi, welcome back to this regular school committee meeting of Thursday, February 14th. We're returning from executive session. At this point, we're going to start our regular meeting like we usually do. First, it doesn't say this, but we're going to talk about our art, right? Because we haven't talked about our art.
Right.
Can you pull the, sorry. While the screen is going up, this art comes to us from the Dahlin School on Board A, which is being revealed. Dahlin artists were given a challenge to make an image starting with just a red dot on their paper. They were encouraged to make the dot into something more, something that might tell a story. And the young artists were invited to write a few sentences about their red dot pictures. Eventually, students began to extend this challenge with dots of other colors, such as black and green, and they're very imaginative, as you can see. Then moving on to Board B, to my right. These paintings represent both independent study in the Dahlin Painting Studio and works by collaborative groups of students. In this display, you may see innovative painting styles that aren't typical of elementary art programs, such as spray bottle painting, marble painting. And one of the advantages of having a choice-based program is that students can explore and invent their own styles of art making. So, and moving on to Board C in the left corner. These ones are inspired by Japan. This display features two art techniques that were inspired by traditional Japanese art forms of sumi-e brush painting and goyotaka fish printmaking. Dahlin brush painters were inspired by the contemporary artist Rebecca Roca, whose videos they watched on YouTube. Students enjoyed working with the specialized materials of traditional bamboo goat hair brushes and rubber fish-shaped printing plates. Yeah, so no real fishes. On Board D, we have Colorful Communities by the kindergarten. They created pictures of colorful communities using resist painting made with tempera paint and oil pastels. They display the efforts of the kindergarten artists to draw two-dimensional and three-dimensional houses. One of their goals was to spread the colors all around their pictures so the viewer's eye would travel all around their artwork. And then in the back, we have moonscape paintings. These are also kindergartners. They learned to paint in a monochrome scale from light to dark using a palette of white, yellow, blue, and black paints. Students were encouraged to mix the colors to create tints and shades. A moon and silhouette was recommended, but the rest of the imagery was up to the young artists. Those are very dramatic. So thank you, Dahlin, for all of your wonderful artwork. So now we move on to public participation, of which we have none. And we move next to the review of the draft 5-year budget plan. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. So this was with the budget subcommittee stuff, but it's in the Novus. If anybody needs a copy of it, there's a couple of them lying around. So as most of you know, I think everybody except Paul and Bill, or actually Bill and Kiersey, have been involved in the subcommittees that were involved in working on the 5-year plan. We've made a lot of progress in developing a multi-year budget plan for the school department. The actual documents are still not quite ready yet, but we do have a general understanding of what we need and when we would need it, and some buckets of areas of strategic initiatives that we want to focus on. So one thing that we continue to face as a district is, of course, the enrollment growth. And we're expecting 600 more students over the next 5 years. So, of course, we need to continue to add classroom and specialist teachers as we have. But we also, as we continue to grow, also need to add student support like nurses, reading teachers, school counselors, ELL teachers, occupational therapists, and things like that. And finally, as the numbers have continued to grow, in addition to the 600, there were 1,200 over the last 5 years. We need additional administrative support. So we added half-time principals to 2 of our elementary schools, and we need to expand that to the rest. We need to add a high school dean. We need to add a central registrar and things like that. So the enrollment growth bucket of items over the 5 years comes to $4.5 million, as you see at the top there. Next item is closing the achievement gap in Massachusetts, actually across the country, but in Massachusetts in particular is something we've been focusing on, is to close the gap between our highest scoring students and our students that are in more high needs populations, so low income, special education, ELL students. On certain performance measures, there's definitely a visible achievement gap between those high need students and the rest of the population. So some things that we're looking to do are improve interventions in student support, literacy coaches, math coaches, and interventionalists. At the middle school level, we would like to replicate a successful program that we have at the high school for students that need returning from extended absences or that have school avoidance issues. We need to strengthen our curriculum leadership and our student data systems. So we'll want to make sure we have a full-time director in science, music, art, and social studies, and also a K through 5 social studies coach and science coach. Our administrative directors need more administrative support so they can spend more time in buildings doing coaching and doing their actual jobs. And we also need a district-wide data coordinator. We would like to create common grade level planning at our elementary schools. When we had 3 classes at each grade level at school, or 2, it was easier for the 5th grade teachers, the 4th grade teachers, whatever, as a group to regularly get together. As we've grown to 3 or 4 classes at each grade level, it's become, and with specialists traveling from school to school, it's become impossible to schedule that core planning time. So this is an initiative which would involve having a dedicated art and music teacher at each of our elementary schools so that there would be space available in the schedule for each grade level once a week to have a grade level meeting and to have common planning time, discuss what they're doing with the curriculum, discuss specific concerns and things like that. And we also need to enhance our special education services, increasing the number of inclusion teachers, adding staffing to our supported learning centers, creating additional programming at the middle school and high school, upgrading some of our positions from TA positions to behavior support professionals, and adding a team chair and assistant director of special education. So all of those items will hopefully make help our higher need students and fall under close the achievement gap, and that's total over 5 years of $2.5 million. Then we also want to improve instruction for students. This is a smaller item, about $1 million over the 5 years. It includes sort of minor enhancements for things like creating a library expense budget for our schools, increasing the funding for curriculum materials, adding elementary librarians and digital learning specialists, and adding computer science teacher to Audison. These are things that we've not been able to do over the last few years as we focused almost exclusively on addressing the enrollment growth with classroom teachers. But these are needs that have gone unmet for a long time, and we'd like to hopefully be able to address. Next up is create safe and supportive schools. This is social and emotional learning, which we've heard a lot about, and supporting the emotional needs of our students. We would be adding social workers, school counselors, funding our district safe and supportive schools teams, funding more professional development in social and emotional learning, adding a lead counselor at the high school, and also adding back part-time elementary administrative staff, again, to help our principals free up their time so that they can deal with the growing needs of students that we've seen. That item is actually the smallest. It's only about $500,000 over the 4 years. And then finally, we have another $1.3 million in the budget in the 5-year plan for attracting and developing talented staff. For too long, our professional development budget has not been sufficient, both for the teachers' wants, things that they want to be able to do, and things that our administrators would like to be able to, would like to be able to expose them to. And at some point, we're going to need to, over the 5 years, we're going to need to look at our contracts. Arlington is still far behind many of our peer communities at some of the levels for teachers and staff. So all that adds up to almost $10 million over 10 years, and 5 years, sorry. Thank you. And we are in discussions with the town through the Long Range Planning Committee to figure out how we might be able to fund that. We did have some good news with our Chapter 70 funding from the state, so that's one source of funds. If that continues, that could potentially fund all of it. I would point out, we do have some money in the budget already for this, so the town did agree to an enrollment growth factor, which does give us money to address the enrollment growth portion of this. That enrollment growth factor, though, is only $3.7 million. It does not even give us the full $4.5 million we need for enrollment growth items, and it doesn't give us any money for any of the other items. So that's where we are. We are still working on the actual narrative that will describe some of this in more detail, and the backup financial information.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
So we're going to take this and we're going to use that in negotiations and conversations in the 5-year planning, the long-range planning committee.
Yes, it's not entirely clear to me that that's the body that should be deciding this, but for now it is. Yeah. But we also will be talking with the finance committee about this. I've talked with several members of the Board of Selectmen. If they want us to present it, we could present it there because they decide the override amount. So yes, that's generally where
because
we're going.
I was going to say that it seems like it should not just be in that body. This conversation should be at a broader.
Yes. And we do need to have a community event, probably in early March, either as a budget subcommittee or with the administration, to present this and get feedback from the community on the draft.
Because I'm assuming we're going to use this to inform the discussions at the select board level about the size of the override.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that's where we want it to be.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? No, I was going to bring up the question about community. So this is, I mean, it's draft, but there is an intent to gather feedback from the community and use that. So it's not, like, we're not just declaring it, we're going.
No, and it's not, it's going to be a living document every year. It's going to need to be updated as the funding comes in. We'll need to figure out priorities. We're probably not going to get 100% of the funding. So those conversations will help us, inform priorities within the plan. There might be new things that come up.
Okay, great. Thank
Great.
you very much.
All right, thank you.
And I forgot to welcome our other members at the table. At the end is Victor Keller, who's a freshman. He is on the wrestling team, which is congratulations. And Ms. Nolan, thank you for coming to represent the AEA. So now at this point, we have the superintendent presenting the proposed FY20 budget.
Shut the mic down a little bit.
What we're going to be looking at tonight is the budget presentation for FY20 next year. And as Mr. Carden had talked about, in the first year of the 5-year multi-year plan, the requests that after a lot of consideration on the part of administrative team, we've had feedback from teachers over the last few months on this, really represents a very carefully thought out, what do we really need to be able to further the mission and the success of our students as we prepare them for their lives, whether in college and career. And in that respect, there are many things as we can talk about at this table that we have done over the last few years in terms of computer science, our social emotional learning, and we'll talk more about that as we go forward. So in this process, let me move on. This presentation tonight will be a joint one with myself and Michael Mason, our new CFO. Though he probably feels like at this point it's not so new. All right. So it's always good, I think, to start out a budget presentation and reminding people what the mission of our schools are. And it's something that we take very seriously in preparing our students for an ever-changing world. And that ever-changing world is something that a lot of thought has been and a lot of discussion has been recently talked about in terms of the world that our students that are in kindergarten today, what they will face when they are entering the job market. Right now, something like 65% of our entering kindergarten students will be working in jobs that we don't even know exist today. So it's a very daunting challenge for us all to prepare our students for with the kind of skills and learning skills and dispositions that are going to have them be successful. All right, so as we've gone through our budget process, we'll get into the numbers of it right now, but one thing that we do know is that we're going to have to prioritize the list that we had determined what we needed in the first year of this 5-year budget. And so we have gone through that process as administrative team, and it was a very difficult process, I might add, because there are so many important competing needs. But as we looked at how we were going to think that through, we used some major categories, and that is obviously enrollment growth. If we look at what's happened over the last 3 years, since the 15-16 school year and presently, we've grown nearly 700 students. As Mr. Carden said, we're expecting to grow another 600. Well, 700 students is bigger than elementary school we have by a couple hundred. It is almost the size of our middle school. It's certainly bigger than our Gibbs School. So we've seen a significant increase there, and which is clearly stretches a lot of resources. And, you know, I do want to say that we are grateful to the town. They've recognized this in helping us with an enrollment growth factor. If we simply stayed with the formula that we have agreed to over these years since the last override, we would be at a level service, but what level service would mean is we basically have the staffing that we have, and class sizes would have increased quite a bit. So enrollment growth, so we maintain some kind of some kind of reasonableness to our class sizes, and of course that can vary. I mean, it can vary within a school, within even a department. That variation can go from, you know, in the teens to over 30. We also want to be able to address the achievement gaps. We have a lot of very successful students that have achieved very, very well on standardized tests, the OECD PISA test. Our AP scores are superb. For example, last year we had 400 students taking AP courses with 900 exams, and 85% of them scored a 3, 4, or 5 on the exam, which is excellent percentage. So our students are doing very well, but there are students that are not doing as well, and we are committed to helping those students also. And one of the things that I think is important in that is having the supports that these students need, as well as having class sizes which are reasonable, so that they can have the attention that they need to be successful. Now, in that, talking about enrollment growth over these years, the increases have been felt more in recent years at the elementary level, as demonstrated by the fact that last year's graduating senior class was 313, and our entering kindergarten class this year was 585. So when we've looked at our budgets over the last few years, the greatest need in terms of allocating our limited resources has been at the elementary level. But that enrollment increase is moving forward to the secondary level, which you'll see some graphs about a little bit later. But one of the things that's happened is that we have put more resources toward the elementary in recent years and less toward the secondary. And you will see this year sort of a bit of an adjustment in that. Particularly at the high school, we have classes that are very large, particularly honors AP classes that are large. PE classes are in the 30s. We don't have, some students cannot get the electives they want at the school. I'm starting to shake your head a little bit that may be true. The freshmen probably don't experience it quite as much as the upperclassmen. So we have students that can have gaps in their schedules. And I think that one of the things that we are committed as a school system is to have students be able to take the courses that they would like to need to take for college, and as well as would like to take because of interest. So you'll see an increase there. It's not that it's any particular department, it's dispersed among all the departments. At the Ottoson, we need a half cluster in the 8th grade. Last year, we increased the 7th grade a half cluster. So what that means is we're going to have 2 more teachers. So the 7th grade will now have we'll have 4 clusters, and the 8th grade will have 4 clusters next year. And as our enrollment increases, there is a need for additional adjustment counselor and specialists in world language, in music, art, as the number of class sections increases. We also need more special education teachers at the secondary level, both in our programs and in our academic support. So that was the first priority as we went through this. But also, we've done a lot of work with safe and supportive schools. And we're going to be continuing to build on the work we've done in past years, and that includes professional development. It includes safe and supportive teams in each of the buildings, and cultural competency, professional development for teachers. And tonight you'll hear a little bit about a grant that we just received, which is furthering this. We also know that there are curriculum materials that we need at all levels. One of the things that is changing at the state level is the new history, social studies standards, which are going to have civics in the 8th grade. So this is changing our entire social studies curriculum, basically from grades 1 through 12. And in doing so, that's going to require more professional development. It's certainly going to require more materials, because some topics that are moving from 8th grade to 7th grade, and then, of course, all the new civics materials for the 8th grade. We recognize and realize that we have not been itemizing increased books for our libraries at all levels, and we're addressing that to some extent next year, certainly not at the level we would like to. We need to update our music materials, and then grade 8. We've moved forward with a change in science curriculum in 6th grade, 7th grade, and now next year will be the 8th grade. And as Mr. Carden was saying, we have a high priority of attracting and developing our talented staff. We have an amazing group of teachers and paraprofessionals who support our students, and as we go through the years, we have different contracts coming up, and we're dealing with some contracts at the moment. We also realize that one of the glaring needs that we have is for substitutes. I will say that Arlington doesn't stand alone in this issue. It's very hard in all districts, but we feel that our salary that we have right now is not competitive enough. So we're going to be adjusting that somewhat. And then, of course, the professional development for teachers. There are some programs that we are committed to doing in the summer, and also all of the work that we do for curriculum and development and assessment development in the summer. So these were our budget priorities that we had. That affects our operating budget. But as we also have looked at school infrastructure, we have had, this is not necessarily out of our operating budget, but we have opened classrooms at Gibbs. We've opened classrooms at Hardy. And in fact, I will just say that we've already completely moved in now at Hardy and into the classrooms. If you were in there, you would think that they've been there for a long time, and reallocating the space to other needs at Hardy right now. We'll talk more about the high school building project, and then we will continue our AHS planning, and we have a lot of different forums that the building committee are going to be out in this spring. We're going to have more tours of the high school. We're really going to present the need for rebuilding this high school to the community over the next couple months. And then there are also capital improvements and facility upgrades that are ongoing. There's a capital planning plan for next year, which again, like many plans, has to be readjusted as needs come up. And we're looking at ways that we need to improve our facilities. Some of it is just, paint, but we need a lot of paint and a lot of time to get it done. All right, so how does the budget get developed? Well, it's an iterative, collaborative, long process, which begins basically in August and involves lots of different people, teachers, as well as administrative teams, as we go looking at what are our needs and then having to go through a priority exercises. So in December at the committee, we had our leadership team and presenting their needs at each level. We we've gone through that process of prioritizing, which is where we are today, and the budget list is in the documents you have in Novus. The last meeting, the school committee accepted the number that the town manager gave for the estimate for town appropriation for FY20, and we are here today presenting an overview of that budget, what the priorities have been, and their very specific items are in the documents that you have. So we're now going to move into unless you want to talk about any of this so far, or you want to go right into the numbers?
Keep going.
Keep going, all right. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Mason.
All right, so here, the anticipated revenues for fiscal '20. This has been presented to you before, very similar numbers, where the town appropriation for fiscal '20 is $70,375,639, which includes an increase that they had assumed the long-range planning committee of 1%. This does not include any additional Chapter 70 funding that has been determined from the proposed governor's budget. And those discussions are still ensuing about how we're going to handle that. But we wanted to propose something that was conservative to here today. Also, with the anticipated revenues, we're assuming that, once again, grant revenues remain the same, and that our reimbursements and revolving accounts are increasing by $270,000, which is mainly based on circuit breaker claims from the previous year that we will receive in fiscal '20. Which this nets out to a total increase of about $4.3 million, it's a 6% increase over the prior year. As proposed in the budget, we plan to use the net increase to cover contractual salary increases that was discussed earlier in terms of current negotiations, but in addition to just wage increases that are annual wage increases that employees may get, or people during the collective bargaining agreements that the school committee has with different unions, there are certain steps that people may go into the next year that we estimate to be around $2.5 million. The fixed mandate cost, after going through the exercises, still remains and holds at $575,000. Once again, this includes special education costs such as out-of-district tuition, transportation, and other mandated services. And that leaves the total proposed increases, which has both Dr. Bodie and Mr. Cardin has spoke about earlier. So this slide, it's a big pie chart. It shows you basically that the town appropriation is the major funding source. It's about 91% of the funding is from the town appropriation. And the town appropriation, once again, consists of local contribution, which is the funding from the town, and then the other part is the state aid. So $58 million is approximately $58.5 million is coming from the local contribution, and $11.8 million is coming from state aid. So the effective amount that the community is providing to educate the students here in Arlington is around 76%. The state provides about 15%, and the rest comes from the grants and the other revolving funds. And this is how we're going to spend the that funding. And it breaks it down based on the different categories. The categories are administration, curriculum, special education, elementary education, secondary education, grants, and other expenditures such as athletics, transportation, and whatnot. And so looking at it, you can see that special education has the largest portion of the cost that we're budgeting for, which is around 30.6% of the budget. However, if out-of-district tuition is 14% lower than similar communities, which says a lot that we're spending money to provide services in-house and we don't have to send students out of district. As well as the $2.9 million that is on there for the administration costs is also 14% lower than similar districts. So we're operating pretty efficiency and not necessarily having the overhead to manage the district. And more funding is going directly to the students' education. This slide takes those categories and shows it how we spent it in FY16, FY17, what was projected in FY18, running blind here, and what we budgeted this year and what we're requesting for fiscal year 20. And some takeaways here are that the secondary shows that, it shows on here that there was growth last year as well as what we're looking for this year. And it's somewhat misleading because the growth of last year for secondary was based on the Gibbs implementation. So if you remove the Gibbs implementation, there's a lot of focus going to secondary this year. And that was a request that we had discussed in previous meetings. And so the increase from last year to this year was 9.53% for secondary education. But if you remove Gibbs, it's a lot more. All right? And that's driven with the discussion that was brought up in the budget priorities. So the next steps is the hearing to get the feedback on what we proposed here, which is February 28th, and the school committee will have to vote on this proposed budget on March 14th, which will then go to the finance committee, will eventually for review, and then go to the town for a meeting for approval.
So we have now had the budget and the budget message put online. So anyone that would like to take a look at the budget in preparation for the February 28th hearing, it is on the district website. You just need to go under the quick links to budget, and it's the proposed budget is there. So for those listening, this is the proposed budget to the school committee over the next couple of weeks through their questions, their priorities. This is going to potentially do some shifting or not. And so that when the committee votes on the budget in March, on March 14th, then it becomes the school committee budget. That's basically how the process works. So there's a detailed listing of all of the budget items that are online, and you have it in Novus now.
Mr. Hayner.
We will be voting a bottom line, am I correct? A figure.
That's
And
correct.
how that money is distributed, we still have the right to determine that in the future, am I correct?
Yes, I think that's a great point. Budgets are blueprints, and when you have a school system as complex as this, as many employees, number of students, things change. They have to change, and they will change. And so as we go through the year, you get updates on the monthly reports just to see how those happen. Now, the intent, this is the intent, but as I said, things can change, and you can.
I just want to make that clear to the public that things are, as you just said, they're flexible, and priorities and stuff may change from where we are. So yes, we'll be voting a bottom line number, and we can't exceed it without, there are ways, but I just want to make it clear that the programs that we've talked about and discussed are not solidly encased going forward, that's all.
I'm quibbling a little bit on your bottom line because we vote buckets.
Yeah.
So we're,
But
we have to move things.
we will be voting a total amount
Yeah.
presented to the town.
right.
The town will,
No, we already,
the town votes a single amount.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the town
It's
appropriation.
a recommendation, I'm sorry.
We vote by budget categories, which I think we switched what the categories were, but we'll work with Michael on that. But there will be 5 or 6 categories, and we will approve the funding for each category. If it changes during the year, they need to come back to us for approval.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I got buckets. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone?
Well, I actually just have a question about the details of the budget, because I've lost track. Are we doing the harbor shortstop at the middle school at Audison next year, or is that, we're not able to fund it for next year?
No, on the proposed 20 increases does not have that. What we did is we looked at, essentially, we're going to have 1.2, which is 1 million roughly in the additional enrollment growth, and then the 0.2, roughly speaking, is circuit breaker. So we then looked at that long list that we had for the roughly 3 million and put in another 500,000 and then another 500,000 if we were to get additional money. It's more toward the
10, okay.
down
Because I
that
know
list.
isn't there a grant that depends on it, on us establishing those programs?
No, but
remember
we'll talk
hearing.
about the grant that we just received. We certainly would like those.
Oh, I thought
that
there was a
program.
grant that was dependent on this. That's what I'd heard from, what's her name? The nurse,
If we get that grant,
if we get that grant, yeah.
we might be able to fund some of it.
Oh, see, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But no, if you look at the list, it's in the budget, it's in all of the details. We actually list out what the exact proposed increases are. And next to it, we check off where it relates to our priorities. And many of the things relate to multiple categories. But the one thing that I think would strike everybody when they look at this is that what is almost consistent through all of the checking is enrollment growth. So our first priorities are addressing those issues. But as I said, there are other things that, it also addresses a particular position. I don't think that this is it paginated? Let me see.
They look for the proposed increases?
Well, I'm just trying to say, if people wanted to look at Schedule 1 in the budget that's online. It's right after it's right actually toward the end of the message.
Page 8.
Yeah. Anyone more questions? Okay. I have a question, which is, so I'm partly trying to make sure I understand correctly. So we heard about the multi-year plan. My understanding is this is a pared-down
Yes.
version of it. Are we going to put in the things that we weren't able to fund in this?
We can. We haven't at this point, but we can. And that might be something you would want. We've done that in past years. And we could take all 3 million, and this is the first third of it really, and then go through all of that. Just list it. We
Yeah.
could do that.
I'm thinking we probably want to do that. And then so we're kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to see what the future will bring in
Right.
terms of override and things. And then we will readdress this if, for example, we were to get more money
Right.
and go down more.
We might even shift some of the priorities, because there's some things, like for example, in the next group of 500,000, it can't be subdivided. It's addressing having dedicated specialists at each elementary school. So it can't be partially funded, it's a whole package. So it may, if we got additional money, have us go back and look at this list and see how we might want to perhaps reprioritize. It just depends on how much additional money we have. And then, of course, when we have it. Some things are much more sensitive to hiring than others. Certainly curriculum materials, well, some of that is actually going to be funded. It's already been put into the revenue source money from revolving accounts in order to pay for these one-time expenses. And there's not something that we probably can reduce or would want to. But, you know, we had a hard time at this, knowing what we really needed to be able to have in order to have reasonable class sizes at all of our schools. So, as you look at the list for the multi-year, if there's things that you feel we should talk about it, if there's something that you feel should rise up higher than what the admin and teachers have put there.
Yeah, I just have actually a question. I have felt, and maybe you do or do not share this, that in the last few years, we gave short shift to the high school, understandably, because there was such huge enrollment growth at the elementary schools. Is there something similar? I mean, and I know we're trying to, at this point now that we're getting this big bulge coming into the high school, we need to add staff. Is there something similar that we feel like next year, you know, we wish we could do this now, but we can't, you know, so, for example, you know, Addison or something like, we just feel like we have to prioritize one over the other, and so we're making hard choices here.
They're making hard choices. Well, for example, the one that you mentioned, the harbor
Right.
stop, the same thing that we have in the high school, bringing it down to the middle
Right,
school.
right.
That might be an example. We could go through it and talk about that. Actually, it's not, what's happening with the high school is that, yes, we're seeing some enrollment growth, but this is sort of a catch-up. A lot of this is catch-up.
No, I know. I'm not saying that the story potentially the last few years is we did what we had to, and we shifted. We didn't put as much into high school as we may have needed to,
Right.
because we had such greater need before. And I'm wondering, what's the story this year? Is it sort of, you know,
Well,
the most pressing need is here, and so this is a really good need, important need, but it's not, you know, we have to make the hard choice.
in terms of what would be down that $3 million list, what's going to happen is if we don't, we will prioritize this. If we don't have additional money, basically, all of that is going to have to shift. Now, we may then, it'll get mixed in what we thought we'd want in year two. We might want to do some reprioritizing. I think for the next couple of years, addressing enrollment growth and, you know, helping students achieve at the level that we want them to in terms of benchmarks, and also safe and supportive schools. I don't think those priorities are going to change. It's a long-term commitment there.
So, any more discussion? No. So what's the next steps?
What are the next steps? The next steps is for you all to, you know, dive into it and see, you know, you have to feel comfortable with the priorities, and we can talk about, you know, why we chose this over something else. We'd be happy to enter into that discussion. I know that in terms of the teachers feel very strongly that, you know, enrollment, class size and enrollment growth is like number one in terms of making sure our classes are reasonable. You know, I think we would all love to see class sizes at the elementary around 20, but that has not been our reality. We sometimes have a couple schools like that, but it's not the average. The average is still in around 23, and I can say that when teachers have talked to me about it. In fact, just this Monday, I had a meeting after school with representatives from every school. You know, they feel as though when they get to 24, 25, that's when you really start feeling that seems to be not magic, but an important line that you go over, in which it really feels that you're not reaching out to students as well as you would like to. So, and I know that our physical education teachers, you know, having classes in the mid-30s is difficult. So that is where it is, and I think that we certainly want to have, you know, our students that are struggling the most have the support that they need. So we're all trying to figure this out to get the right balance of what we need at every level.
One other thing I realized I forgot to bring up. This is kind of a combination between the multi-year plan and the budget. Just, I continue to wish that we were doing things to analyze better what the results are that we're getting from initiatives that we have done. And I'm just wondering if any of the changes in the multi-year plan could be set as an initiative where it's very clearly spelled out the period of time that we're going to try this, and then what we're going to do to review it and analyze the results, and what we expect to see, and then how we're going to measure our results. And it would also give us a point where it gives a clear turning point where you can say, okay, we set out to do this and look, it works, so we're going to go on to the next and improve on this. Or maybe you say, well, we set out to do this, but it didn't really achieve what we wanted. And it gives you a point to say, okay, so now we need to think about what else could we try. And I'm not sure, I can't put all the multi-year plan stuff in my head and spit out this is, but I just feel like that's something that would be helpful both for the school district. It'd be helpful to communicate to the community what we're doing and what we expect to see. It'd be helpful for our friends on Finance Committee and stuff.
Yep.
And so I'm just wondering, can we be thinking about that and maybe
Yes,
plans?
there'd be a lot of things. For example, do you want us, when we look at responsive classroom training, how do we measure the success of that? So it would be, I think that we could do that for a lot of different programs or investments, but it'd be helpful if we knew what you specifically would like this to hear more about. You don't have to say right now, but it would be helpful, and then we could give some presentations, and we can have people come into the committee and talk about that.
Yeah, I guess you want to,
Yeah, I mean, I think we delegate to you to choose something
Okay.
that is measurable. I mean, again, it has to be measurable, not a survey of teachers about what they learned, but like something measurable, like classroom absences, for example. Can we do something to reduce classroom absences, if that's a goal of yours? I'm just wiping this out of my head.
Yeah.
But something that's clearly measurable before and after is sort of what we're looking at.
I think it could be some survey data like how students are feeling about school and stuff. You have
Yeah,
the before, you
some
have the
survey,
after.
yes.
Yeah, some survey, but you need
Right.
to know what the instrument is. You need to have a before, you need to have an after, and you need to plan in, what are we going to test? And these can go over multiple years. It's just, I think it would be helpful so that we know if we're actually achieving the results that we want to achieve.
Right. Well, last year, we had Sue Frankie, who is Director of Nursing, come in and talk about the trends that we've seen with just nursing services in terms of number of students that return to class, and what you see perhaps in different schools where there's different levels of implementation. I mean, those are the kind of
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
and so you had some of that last year, and I remember her talking about, for example, at one of our elementary schools, what was the perceived effect of mindfulness training that had happened in the school, and the amount, the grade levels, and what the impact was on the number of students that were actually coming to the nurse's office. Those are the kinds of measurable things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's helpful if you do it even in advance, so you know what happened before you did any changes, and then you can say, okay, then I made this change, and then this is what happened after. And
Yeah.
it helps you know what programs to roll out more, or maybe to just change,
No, well, we're interested in the data as well. In fact, this is one of the things that we've talked about as an administrative team, that Dr. McNeil's talked about, of looking at really trying to dig into data more. And it's not sometimes the big data. We always talk about MCAS, but sometimes it's little data. It's the effects of an implementation. And we don't want it to necessarily be anecdotal, we want it to be measurable, but then they also have to bring in the qualitative. But we can do that. We can start, we could try to, and have some of that at each one of the meetings going forward.
So related, when we were talking about the five-year plan, there was a request to sort of provide an idea, what do we mean by closing the achievement gap? What would it mean to have closed the achievement gap or to have made progress in closing the achievement gap? And so to come up with some metrics now that we think the initiatives that would be adopted during that five-year plan would help us meet those metrics.
Right.
So
Right.
sort of it's an expectation of some people who will be making those decisions around the five-year plan, and it's good practice to do in general, to say, you know, what's our vision of what we want? What do we want to get to?
Right. I don't disagree, and there are certain ones that are more important than other ones. For example, third grade benchmarks in reading, and those kinds of benchmarks are really important.
Absenteeism, probably.
And absenteeism, and there's a lot of different ones. The number of suspensions that, and we've talked about that with Dr. Janger recently. So there are definitely metrics that we can look at, and happy to hear if there's particular metrics you want us to look at, because we're looking at a lot. We are creating a lot. We're creating. We have data teams, but we're also really looking at ways that we can organize it in a more efficient way for people to look at, which has actually been a real challenge. And one of the things in the five-year plan is a request for somebody who's a data manager. It's when you have limited resources, you really have to be strategic. And how are you strategic unless you look at some data?
Right.
It's not just what you think will work. Now, sometimes you think it's going to work and you identify it as a problem, and the initiative doesn't have the effect, and so you have to go back and rethink it. And that's happened to us more than once.
I'd say the things that I would love to see budge, these are actually not related to closing achievement gap, reports of people considering suicide or you know, that kind of self-harm type of thing. Absenteeism at the high school level, and of course the suspension data.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's happening this year, you know, last year we entered in with the Middlesex League to do the youth risk survey.
Yeah.
And we're doing it again this year. And we're out of, because last year we were out of cycle, but now we're all the Middlesex League is going to be in the same cycle. And we are identifying questions that we can add a few of our own by district. But those absenteeism we can get from a different source. But certainly the issue of self-harm or ideas of suicide, all of those are something that we capture from that particular survey. One of the advantages of us working together on this is that, one, we can see how we're doing in comparable districts as opposed to state or national averages, though that's interesting too. But it also gives us a sense of how we're progressing as we look at that. Those are really important ones. But it goes through our social emotional emphasis, for sure.
I'd also like to see that we saw the nursing incidents through, like, I think it was early May of last year, but we didn't close out 2018. So, and I think some of the trends that we had seen from 2016 into 2017 didn't look like they were going to carry through to 2018. So I think it would be helpful to take a look at that, because I don't want to be making decisions based on a trend that was from 2 data points so.
So you want the report on nursing?
I mean, I think there's some value in, nursing. I think, we don't want anything too specific, obviously, because but, the number of, nursing encounters or whatever, whatever is some kind of data that we can look at year over year. I don't know. I'm not interested in anything about specific students or specific kinds of incidents, but I think it's data that's out there, right? It would be nice to see it.
There's a lot of data, so it's important to know what data you want to see and get reported out.
So no more questions? Okay, thank you very much. So moving on, we have the superintendent's report.
Great. Well, since you've been listening to me talk, I'm going to let Dr. McNeil talk about a grant that we have that's aligned very much with some of our priorities here.
So this year, we applied for and received a grant for the Community Health Network area, which is a regional coalition that services Arlington as well as 5 other districts. One of the goals, and it's called CHINA. It's the acronym. As you know, in education, we love acronyms. So it's the Community Health Network Area 17. And so they've reduced that to CHINA. But one of the goals of CHINA is to ensure best practice, advancement of racial equity, and support reciprocal learning opportunities to address the needs of the most marginalized members of our community. So some of the things that you've just been discussing, we will be doing as we respond and implement this grant, in which now we're in the planning phases. So the specific grant that we receive will provide us with financial resources to address some of the needs that were identified in a 2017 report conducted by CHINA 17 in the 6 districts that participate in that coalition. The funding for the grant is provided by the Mount Auburn and McLean hospitals. And one of the primary needs that were found from the study as it relates to Arlington, which was done on, which the participants in the study were U.S.-born Black African-American adults who reside in Arlington. And one of the findings was that there was a lack of access by these participants to mental health services. So this grant will also provide us an opportunity to partner with the Arlington Youth Counseling Center. And currently, like I said before, we're in the planning phases, during which time we'll have to conduct a SWOT analysis, which we'll have to look at our current resources, which looks at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because what we want to do is we want to look at our students and see how they're impacted by this lack of access to mental health services within the town, and how that's affecting our Black and African American students in the Arlington Public School District, and what barriers are in place that's not allowing them to access these mental health services. Whether or not they be cultural, whether they be, are there policies in place, are there practices, what resources are we using to address the problem, what are the relationships and connections that we have with these students, and you know, so looking at different various barriers that may be in place that's not allowing these students to access these mental health services. I just want to credit Julie Dunn, our Director of Communications, Title I, and our grants for writing this grant. Sarah Bird, who's currently on maternity leave, but she initiated us to our ability to apply for the grant, and she's the Director of Counseling and Social Emotional Learning. Margaret Credo Thomas, who's our METCO Director, and I also want to highlight and acknowledge Colleen Ledger, who is the Director of AYCC, and her willingness to partner with us as we go through the planning phases, go through the planning phase, and eventually implement the resources that we receive from this grant.
We will have Christine Bongiorno, who has joined us today, who is Director of Health and Human Services in town, is also going to be working with us. So it's a great partnership that's going to be going on in this, and data is certainly a piece of it as we...
Well, yeah, I want to emphasize that part of the SWOT analysis that we'll have to do a analysis of data that we've collected over the past year, as well as look at various data that we would like to collect moving forward, which may include doing focus groups with our Black and African American students and their families, because we're not just focusing on the students, we're also focusing on the adults and the families, and being able to partner with them in order to address some of these mental health concerns that our Black and African American students may be experiencing.
Just a quick question. Is it a one-year program? Is it a multi-year program?
So it's a two-year
Two-year
program,
grant.
so you
Okay.
receive part of the funds up front. So it's a $7,000 grant, so we receive $3,000 for the planning phase, and then, if you get through that, then you receive the additional $4,000 to assist with implementation.
Yeah, I think one of
Sounds like
the.
enough money.
Yeah, it's not that much money, but it's not a huge amount, but it's going to be a nice stimulus to get moving on some of the data. And these things that you've mentioned are certainly data that we're going to be looking at more.
It falls directly in line with our goal of addressing cultural issues within the district. So I agree with Dr. Bodie that it's going to provide us with a spark for moving forward in this particular area, and just, add to the other knowledge that we're going to gain from doing this type of analysis of these specific pieces of data. So.
How will you find out, or given what you were saying, I'm just wondering, how will you know if a problem in accessing mental health resources is specific to the target group versus a problem that would affect everyone?
Right.
If there aren't enough counselors, how will you know? I mean, you'll know that they're having problems reaching counselors, but you won't know that everyone's having that problem versus just the target group.
Well, that's a good question. I think that, like I said before, like just looking at and analyzing this data, we'll use it in order to also look at systems that we have in place, look at policies, and see how it's not only impacting that target group, but also our general population of students. So we can use this as a way of digging deeper and looking at our systems that we have in place.
It's going to also be bigger than just the school system, because looking at the town to the community and who is servicing in certain roles, do we have enough diversity there to address some of the needs that we're seeing here? And, are all of our counselors that are available white women? These are things that we're going to be looking at together. And so I think it's an important, why I wanted you to be aware of this is that it goes to, your point about more looking at data very carefully, and what we're going to be doing is that I think right now we know that we probably need something in the middle school in the way of one of those kinds of programs. But I think that, I don't think we've done enough data analysis of that. It's more of a, I would say that it's more of a feeling on this. It's not more than that. It's somewhere in between hard data and just looking at what the experience has been over at the middle school, and the number of students that are being absent for social emotional reasons, anxieties, how many kids are being hospitalized and then coming back, and then having to go back into hospitalization. That data we do have, so I don't want to say it's feeling, but we need to do a little bit even deeper dive into that data. So anyway, going on, I want to talk about the high school.
Okay.
And two colleague members here, and the chair of the Arlington High School Building Committee here, who is now taking on a second full-time job in that role. Close to it recently.
Pretty close.
I think that probably characterizes all of us at the moment. But we are in a very good position in terms of what's happening with the high school. Over there is still the same rendition we had. There's going to, for the high school, we saw some further drawings, sketches at the last meeting. But the important part where we are right now is that we have moved the needle on what the budget is for the high school, which I think has been one of the important considerations we've been talking over the last couple of months. Is 308 just seemed it's a lot of money, but over through this whole process the building committee has been looking at ways that we can reduce the cost of providing a new high school, starting with the original decision which was to not, which was to go with a new school because the cost would be about $25 million less than it would have been to do an addition with a renovation, and then looking at all of, besides the additional cost of that decision, but it would have meant that we would have had 2 years without an auditorium and 2 years without a gym. And so how do you have a high school with no gym for 2 years? It just was not something the building committee thought was feasible. So we've been looking at ways to reduce it. The budget, in the last couple of months, we have found facilities is moving to the new DPW project area, which is under planning right now. IT, the controller is moving to the town hall. We've also, the building committee took out, and the committee supported that idea here, of taking the build out for payroll out, though we have been working this last week, instead of scrunching the existing costed out floor plan for district to be able, and registration to be able to accommodate the payroll within already the district offices, which have already been laid out. So we've been working on that. But over the course of this, over the last couple months, and including the work we did recently, we've shaved another $17 million off the project cost. So we're down to $291 million approximately. So where are we now? The next step is that we have the schematic design with the budget for that has to be submitted to MSBA, all the documentation, supporting documentations on February 20th. So the building committee was supposed to meet Tuesday evening with the snowstorm, but sort of early on, we had to cancel it as conditions worsened, or the forecast for conditions worsening. So it's been rescheduled to this coming Tuesday night, right under the wire, because the vote has to be taken on the 19th in order to be submitted to MSBA on the 20th. And that is the plan, and those people who would like to come and listen to the discussion that's going to go on are most welcome. It's going to be in this room at 6 o'clock next Tuesday. So that's where we are. Once it is submitted to MSBA, there will be some follow-up questions, which MSBA always asks. Some of it's documentation, some it's come in and meet with them. And during the next month and a half, we'll come to a project's agreed upon project scope and agreement and budget. And that budget's it. Once the budget's set, we don't go over that budget. And you have to make other adjustments during the course of time. It is not a creeping budget. It is a fixed budget. But then the Board of Directors for MSBA will formally vote project scope agreement at their April 10th meeting. And right around then is when we'll know what the exact budget is.
Does that start the 90-day clock?
120.
That vote?
120.
Pardon me?
120.
120. But it starts when they take that vote.
Yep.
We have to, the town has to commit to funding
Yes.
in that 120 days.
Right.
Yes.
Votes.
I know there may be some flexibility, but,
No, I don't think so.
well,
No.
Adam said the other day, he did a presentation to Rotary and said that they've been known if if it doesn't pass, but there is an intent to bring it up a second time within a reasonable time, they would do it. But that's when the clock starts, the
don't wanna get there.
120 days.
We don't want to get
It'll pass.
June 11th.
June 11th.
June 11th, and then
Yes,
we
yes.
don't know, I don't know if we know the date yet for the special town meeting.
No, they're supposed to set the date. It might be, I don't know the date. They had an email about that today, I don't know.
So that's where we are on the project, and once the project is voted and approved, then there's a whole, another year of design development that's tweaking this, looking at floor plans. We've still been looking at floor plans, intensively looking at floor plans over the last few days. Doesn't mean that there's still not going to be adjustments, but we want to have it as clear as possible. But we know that there's going to be a few things that'll have to, as you get into it, because we haven't even hired the contractor yet. and I know in other projects, when the contractor comes in, they might make some suggestions in phasing or that can modify it. That's happened in other building projects in other communities. And so we'll just have to wait and see where that is. But the important thing people to know is any changes are within the budget that is approved.
When does the contractor get hired?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go out to bid on that
Right.
as soon as we have
We're talking
a
June?
positive
or we're
vote.
talking
Very
May?
Other towns have done it before, so.
Well, we might go,
We might do,
before.
yes, we might do something tentative, yes, so that we're
So in
ready
April,
to,
potentially?
yeah.
we could, if we, you see.
We can choose somebody, we just don't sign it yet or something.
No, you would sign it's pending
Pending
positive,
Pending
favorable vote.
They've already been, bid documents, I think.
Right.
Been starting to be put together on that.
Yeah, actually. Not, I mean, there has been a lot of discussion in the community that's false about this project. And one of the discussions has been that somehow we went out to bid with a certain number. And it's given that we haven't gone out to bid at all, we
No.
didn't go out to bid with a certain number. And so it's
We haven't gone out to
It was
bid.
in the RFP.
It was in the bid for the designer.
for the designer, okay.
And OPM, too.
What was the
Bid
bid?
on that.
When we went out to bid for the designer to get HMFH, whatever
Yeah.
their name is, the numbers in there was the 150 to 170
Yeah.
million number that people are citing.
Got it.
Okay, but that's not a contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, it's to give a sense of the scope of the project. And the problem is that the MSBA doesn't want you to do a lot of pre-work
Right,
before you
right,
go
right,
through.
right.
And so
Yeah.
that's where, if you go back and look at a number of the other schools who are before us and stuff, they're all in that same, much
Yes.
lower than the actual project ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Got it.
important
So-
for people to understand. I don't follow all this stuff, but every project that went out
Same-
around that
same
time,
process.
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. And so, yeah, but, we'd love to get our architects to charge us for a $150 million building, to build a 300. So we'll see if we can make that happen.
That'd be great. So, very exciting. One last thing, I just mentioned, we're talking about building projects. As I mentioned earlier, we moved into the wing, but we've experienced with this recent storm some leaking at Hardy. You've been familiar with buckets you've seen here on this floor when we've had some heavy rain. Well, they had some buckets put around. So this has been something that we have been trying to address over the last couple of years. We caulked windows, we have put waterproofing on the building, we have patched roofs, we've even done some repointing. So Mr. Mason went over there today to get a visual on it. Our director of facilities, we're all looking to see what we might need to do soon as we continue to have wet weather. The roof for Hardy is on the capital plan, it's just in out years. So that might be something that needs to be addressed. So I just wanted you to be aware of it. You may hear from people that, what is this we just got these 6-room addition on Hardy, and why didn't we address it? Well, we actually did when we were planning the 6-room. We did do some work on that. So right now, we might need to spend some money on doing some further analysis of the situation. That's where we are.
Can I add one thing
Yes,
about,
please.
just about the building committee? So just to be aware, the committee is going to be making presentations to various groups in town over the next month. So we're going to the Open Space Committee, the Capital Planning Committee, the Finance Committee on March 4th. We're meeting with Arts and Cultural Commission. There's a bunch of them that we're having. So there's be lots of meetings, and so there'll be lots of chances for people to come and who have questions that are interested in particular issues, these groups, Transportation Advisory Council, all that stuff. Okay,
Open space,
Open Space is
Space.
on the 25th.
ETBC.
PTBC, we're trying to get a date on that, right? So we'll be out there answering questions.
and when we ever get the tours, we'll do more tours, and so people can come in and see it and ask questions, so that all is in the works as well.
And we're going to try to do a session here for town meeting members. We will be doing a session for town meeting members in April at some point.
Yeah. I will say that the website that we have developed is really
Spectacular.
excellent in terms of what's in there. We've looked at other websites, and I give a lot of credit to Dr. Allison Ampe and Amy Spear, who really have worked on this. There is so much information on that website. If people really want to get into seeing the development of the plan and where we are, and it's there.
And if people, if there are questions in the community that you're hearing, just, you can email Karen Tassoni the question and say this, the building committee should consider answering it in the FAQ. Yeah, so, yeah, Karen, just email Karen Tassoni. This question came up, send it to Karen Tassoni, and then she has a process to get it to people in the committee. Yep.
That's
Like
it.
the question you just raised, just say to Karen, they'll answer it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I have a quick question.
Please.
Can I ask about kindergarten, or can we do it in 2 weeks? Like, or can it be part of the report? I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but can it either be part of the report? Do we meet again in 2 weeks? Probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
think
can
the
give
buffer
you-
letters went out, or.
The buffer letters went out. I'm glad actually you brought that up. I was going to give you an update later, but we're in the 400s now. Can't tell you exactly what it is. Every day we get new registrants. I did get the buffer letters out as promised. Some people did not get their first choice. It's very interesting as we look at some of the schools that have 4 classrooms right now, Bishop and the Pierce. We are very conscious of thinking about that in terms of trying to make sure that our class sizes are fairly comparable to the extent possible. One of the things that will happen, though, as we get more students, we get a fuller idea of what the registrations are at the kindergarten level. People who would want to be on the wait list can be, and they will get first choice. I mean, they're registering, as we said, they will get first choice, and so there may be some rolling out as we go forward this spring, and I'm sure there will be, in fact. I think we've registered, 20-some people just this week. I don't know where they fall in the buffer zones, because we're not going to deal with that yet until after vacation.
Thank you.
Great. So at this point, we have the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence. Approval of warrant number 119146 dated 1/24/19 in the amount of $445,528.93. Approval of minutes, regular school committee minutes dated 1/10/2019, 1/24/2019, and special school committee minutes dated 1/30/2019. Approval of trips, AHS history and not sure what SS stands for. Social Studies, Vietnam trip.
Did you hold that one?
Okay. AHS Student Council trip to MASC in 2019. That's it. Can we motion?
Move to approve those presented.
Okay. And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes unanimously. Now, Mr. Hayner had asked for the history and social
Trip.
study trip.
2 things. Number one, first off, we're being asked to approve a trip that they've already left on. That's according to the documents. The other part,
Next year.
2020.
2020.
2020, okay, thank you. I apologize for not paying attention. One of the items in the thing, this brought my attention, it says visiting sites from the Vietnam War. Who will be presenting? Do we know who's presenting that? Is it at the in Vietnam itself? So it would be being presented by the people?
We could find out. In fact, it occurred to me, we should have them come in and present to the committee about this, if you'd like. Usually when it's a first trip, we usually do that. But I think they were anxious to get going because kids want to plan. But it's run by EF, if I'm not mistaken. And EF has a great track record of really getting great presenters.
I personally would like to just meet with them ahead of time and talk with them. I have no problem coming
I think
before
that's a
here.
great idea.
I just have personal involvement.
I think this
I'd
would
like
be
to-
a great idea, once they know who's on the trip, to invite
But
people.
I'm more interested in those that are presenting.
Oh, the ones that are
The-
presenting.
the-
They're probably living in Vietnam right now, the presenters.
My concern is a balanced, not one-sided, a balanced approach to the conflict that took place. That's my concern, and I'd just like to hear what they are planning on presenting, that's all. I'm not looking to create any controversy.
Yeah,
It sounds like it would be good to have
Yeah.
the teachers who are planning the trip come in and talk, and you can mention to them that this is a concern, and could they get information about it?
But I don't want to, I'll talk to Dr. Bodie. Thank you.
you'll arrange it? Okay.
Okay, great. So there are no policies, and now we have subcommittee and liaison reports. Budget?
So we met just before this meeting to, well, let me take a step back and repeat which I said earlier at the budget subcommittee meeting. We went to the long-range planning committee meeting a week ago or so, and presented the same outline of the 5-year plan that I gave tonight. We also discussed with them the additional Chapter 70 money. The request was to have the town manager's staff run a few scenarios through the long-range plan and the override model related to our full funding request, medium request, and a low request. So we met earlier tonight to discuss what those different requests would be, and we'll get, Mr. Mason will get that back to the town manager's office in the upcoming few days. We have another long-range planning meeting on Monday, the 25th, to go over that. We also discussed the other issue that was raised at long-range planning was, we've been stating for a while that the funding that we get for enrollment growth, which is currently 35% of our per pupil spending based on the state data report that we do every October, is insufficient. And there was discussion about, what are our fixed costs that don't really change that much as our population grows versus our variable costs. So we are taking a look at that, and we'll hopefully have some information to present to long-range planning about that as well. We have the budget hearing coming up at our next meeting, at the beginning of our next meeting. And there will also be, at some point, hopefully in early March, a community forum on the long-range plan, which we discussed earlier.
The other thing, we had gotten an email, I don't think you were CC'd on it, and I'm sorry, I should have forwarded it to you, asking for us to sign up for a date for presenting to FinCom.
Oh,
And
okay.
I don't know, so the options were Monday, the 11th, Wednesday, the 13th, Monday, the 18th, or Wednesday, the 20th. I don't know if you want to pick now or if you want to talk about it and then decide. But we need to get back to them. But I think that if you don't want to pick now, I think that you, Dr. Bodie, Mr. Mason, and Mr. Carden can work out between you what you think the best date is and just let the rest of us know. But they were asking us to send back which of these dates.
Well, I think that we have to go to FinCom after you vote the budget.
We can still set up a date.
Yeah,
Yes, we're not voting the
Right.
budget till the 14th.
right.
So
I'm
she's
saying we have
saying-
to,
yeah.
Oh, it has to
but
be
we
after
have to
that.
tell them which
Right.
date
She's
we
saying
want
the
to.
14th is out. 'Cause
Okay.
I mean, the
The
13th and
the
11th.
11th, okay,
13th
so
and 11th are
it's
out.
either the 18th or the 20th, right, so.
Right. So
You want to just say it's the 20th?
I sort of thought it was going to be the 20th, actually. Let me
Okay, well,
see,
these were the menu
But
that,
either one
we
could,
were-
let me look. Yeah, either one, the dates could work for me. Monday, the 18th, or the Wednesday.
Nope, probably a later date, just to make
okay,
sure we
then I
get.
think the 20th it is, and
Do you have
I can,
Yeah,
is that okay? Okay, then I'll just send an email and I'll CC everybody that this is the date we're picking. Okay, great. So, what's that? Community relations.
Yes, I have a bunch of things. First, though, I want to ask about the recent school committee chat, which was
Oh, yes.
you guys, right?
Yes.
Good. Let me pull up my notes. I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot to bring my notes.
Do you want to?
And I need the, I'm on next,
Oh,
I need the thing.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
the thing. Okay.
So we had several people stop by.
Mhm.
Some people just saw our sign and came.
Yep.
I think a couple people came. The first person who came was interested in the diversity.
Like a task group.
Yeah, no, he had a specific request, and I didn't bring my notes. What was it?
I don't know what they call I don't know what I named the file.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look.
Why
back
don't you
at
go
Okay,
to your.
go to the other
thing
things.
and
Okay, I
find the
thought this
file.
was an easy, like,
Yeah,
quickie thing,
no.
sorry.
Go to the other
Okay,
thing.
so then what I'd like to do with the approval of the chair is to talk about the calendar survey first, because I think it's quicker, and then talk about the start time issue. Okay. So I just wanted, we have in Novus a narrative that I created about the calendar survey, and I just wanted to sort of present that formally to everyone. On the calendar survey, we asked 3 questions. We asked whether, so 2 of them involved calendar issues, and 1 was about the late start. The questions about calendar was whether to start school before Labor Day and whether to have school on religious holidays, on 3 of the 4 religious holidays that we currently don't have school. And the results of the calendar issues, what it looked like is that there just wasn't enough consensus about making any changes, either to starting before Labor Day or to having school on the religious holidays. Starting school before Labor Day, interestingly, was a little bit more attractive to teachers, a little less attractive to parents. Having school during the religious holidays where we currently don't have school sort of had a little bit more support among parents than among teachers, but there just didn't seem to be any strong consensus. I do want to remind the community that we are about to enter into a period that we get every once in a while where Labor Day starts very late. And we have a situation that if we have 5 snow days, we end school at the very, very end of June. And so what we've talked about a little bit is that we want to have a conversation with the community, with teachers and administrators about possible ideas about whether we want to make changes to address that issue. The answer could be no, but I think it's deserving of a little bit broader conversation. I think it also, since we haven't had that issue recently, it's not sort of salient in people's mind as much because we've had an earlier Labor Day, so people aren't sort of hitting against the very end of June and having classes there. So they're not, it seems like it's working now, but in a couple of years it won't. So that, there's a lot going on in this community, but that will be another thing that will be going on starting in the spring, having conversations with people about their thoughts and ideas. I just want to mention something about, I apologize that I think some of the language around the calendar survey was a little bit misleading and sort of didn't give enough background of all the issues that we're discussing. People, the issue about religious holidays is very emotional to lots of people on many different sides. People who feels that their religious holiday is being recognized and are worried about that getting taken away. People who feel that the religious holiday isn't being recognized and want to include it. And so there's just, I know that this is just a big conversation, and I want to assure the community that nobody's moving fast on this. We want to really hear from everyone. We're not looking to make a decision tomorrow without hearing from everyone. Okay, so late start time. So when we looked at the calendar survey, and so I want to say that we have 73% of the parents were in favor of moving the high school start time to 8:30. 12% had no preference at all. So about 15% were opposed. On middle school, it was slightly different. Those who wanted to keep it the same were 63% wanted to move it to 8:30, 18% no preference, and I don't have that number there, but whatever it is, 70, 80 to 1, 19% wanted to keep it the same. Among teachers and staff, 40% preferred to move the start time to 8:30, 29% preferred the 8 o'clock start time, and there's a huge number of people who had no preference. And my guess is some of the people who had no preference were probably the elementary school. But no, there's some discussion about internal numbers. I never saw it. Since then, since we've done this survey, we had a open forum with community members. About 25 people showed up. It was really interesting, productive to get parents' thoughts. We also solicited letters from people, and that was also very interesting. And I'll tell you the results. And I apologize for the bad formatting, which I realized came from Excel, and then some spelling mistakes. We had a letter that 42 people signed up on strongly supporting the move to 8:30. We had 23 individual letters that are strongly supporting, and it's hard to make these, understand the numbers because some of the signatories to the letters were 2 parents in a household, where some of the individual letters might have had another parent in the household whose name wasn't listed. So in terms of how many households that we're hitting, my guess is about 60 households. I heard from about 60 households. At the time that I produced this, which was a week ago, we hadn't had really any opposition. We had one person who said, I'm opposed, but if you have to do it, only do it at the high school. I had one person who said, I'm totally in favor at the high school of doing this at the high school, but not at the middle school. And then I had someone who made a suggestion about staggering the buses. Since then, we've heard from some parents who are opposed to the start time. And for parents, the issues for them that come up, there's logistical issues on both ends. Some people are worried about ending school later because their kids have jobs or activities that they're worried about that cutting into. Some kids are worried about, don't like the current start time because their kids have early morning activities and they have to get here at 7 in the morning. Or they don't want their kids home as early as they are. They'd rather them come home later and have less time to get into trouble. There was all sorts of logistical issues about transportation that came up on both ends. Let's see. At the forum, of about 25 people, 4 seemed clearly opposed, some for logistical reasons. A couple people expressed skepticism about the research and thought that if we just have a later start, kids are just going to get bed later and they won't get any increase in sleep. I want to remind the public, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends an 8:30 start time for, and there's been a bunch of research that shows that kids' circadian rhythms shifts after adolescence, and that their sleep-wake cycles are different, and so that, having that extra half an hour of sleeping actually does increase their sleep time and increases their REM sleep, and it has benefits on social emotional reasons. It has benefits for academic achievement. It has benefits for health and well-being in terms of, people being overweight or accidents that can happen. So there's all these benefits that the American Pediatric cites. Since we've been talking about this, I know that and it's interesting that parents who started opposing it came out recently. Since we've been talking about it, I know that teachers have expressed some concerns that they hadn't expressed earlier about ways that this might be difficult for their families. And so I think as a community that we still need to keep talking about this. I don't, I think about 85% of the parents are in favor of this, but I think probably the numbers have shifted a little bit for teachers, and the concerns that they raise are legitimate, concerns that we have to take into consideration. And I think probably Dr. Bodie might want to talk more about that. I don't know.
I guess
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the next step should be. I'm feeling like should this be an actual agenda item, which I think probably it should be,
Yeah.
but there needs to be administration input too, and I'm not sure we have that settled what.
I have a question, just when is, we would have to take a vote on this by anytime before June, I guess, right? We could just, but we should, but what's your recommendation? When do we need to take this vote?
Ideally in March, though what I'm learning is that maybe for some of our teachers, they needed something right after January because of signing up for after-school care.
It's February.
And it's February, yeah, it's February. I mean, there's some districts that are putting it off to the spring to start the discussion. We have had discussions. I think when the reality that this could be something that would be possible, I think had people looking very more closely at some of the constraints that would be for them in their lives, and they're legitimate. They're legitimate concerns in terms of the cost of preschool, additional time they would have. I think a common issue is just the time in terms of after meetings, getting home. The traffic has been a common theme, and I was looking at some articles recently in the front page of the Globe that Boston has the worst traffic jams.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if we should
So-
just stop.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think, I think that this needs to be like a posted agenda item. And
That's what I was,
Exactly.
if you let me finish what I was going to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we should put this on the agenda for next week,
The next time.
for our next meeting, and
But
we don't have to go through all of the discussion, but people should know that we're talking about it and have a chance to come and respond.
More questions?
Yes.
So if this is a policy, would this require 2 readings?
Not a policy.
It's not a policy, so it's not a policy, okay.
No. Right.
Well,
But there might be.
But we do 2
There's-
readings for calendars, right?
We're not making a decision right now.
No, I'm not, I'm just asking about the process coming up, but don't we do 2?
This potentially could also be a contract issue as well as policy or a decision. We need to get all the facts from the superintendent. I think you're right in making it a
Yeah,
regular
we
agenda
need to
item.
make it an agenda.
Well,
item.
okay, so I would just request that the chair do some thinking about whether we should do it like the calendar, or if we do in fact go forward, we have 2 votes. We have a first reading and a second, like we do with the calendar, we have a first and a second reading. I don't know, do some research on it, I don't have an answer.
may
Yes, please.
I do want to follow up on Mr. Hayner's comment.
Yeah.
When we were looking at the issue of contracts, we were very much looking at the language around calendars in the contract. And there are some other issues that have surfaced really in the last couple of weeks as people start talking about this more, that are going to require some negotiations. And I think that is something that could certainly delay a change as we move through this. I think there's no one that doesn't, well, I shouldn't say no one, but there are, the majority of people and teachers, when they did the survey, have recognized that the issue of additional sleep and how that can affect students in terms of performance, their moods, their just ability to cope with stresses. I think we all see that as an issue. Now, I was part of the Middlesex League group that made this suggestion to move start times between 8 and 8:30 to be in alignment with some of these recommendations. And I personally feel that, we should do that. but I'm also mindful of all of the issues that have come. I think it's sort of human nature that as you get closer, maybe we're going to come to a decision point, people start talking about it, thinking about it more. I'm not even sure, we haven't even surveyed students to see where they are, and that might be something we want to take a look at. In the policy committee that you and I both attended, that wasn't unanimous, was at all. So there are issues here, and it's logistics, contractual, and we probably are going to need more time on this. I'm happy to have it as an agenda item, and we can talk more about it. You have a list of all the comments that teachers have been sending over the last week. I will tell you that, most of the school systems are moving from the 7:30 range into the 8s. Belmont next year is going to go to 8:05 from a 7:35. So people are moving in this direction. The question is what is the pace that we can do it?
Lefty.
Mr. Schlickman.
This is something we've been talking about for quite some time. And every time we talk about it, it's like, well, we can't because of the athletics, we can't because of this, we can't because of that. And now we've got Winchester starting at 8:30, we've got other schools moving. So the big thing that was holding us back was that we'd be out of whack with everybody else.
I think.
I mean, let me finish, okay? My frustration is if we go and look for another long list of reasons why we can't do it this year, we'll be in a situation why we can't do it next year, and we'll never sort of get there. I want to say that if there is any way that we can take the advice of the students who were here before us and of all the research and all the conversation we've had and a majority of parents and a majority, in the surveys, to move back to 8:30, I want to do this. And I don't have the patience for sitting around and sort of, well, maybe we can't. We've got to take a definitive stand somehow and say, if this, I would intend to make a motion to move the start time and see how it falls. And we can debate it over here, but I think it's time for us to start to make the move. I really am. I don't want to go and have this as a conversation for another year or two.
I'm not questioning that. I think we have to do it as a agenda item.
Oh,
We
yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah.
just go
I'm
on.
saying,
Yes,
put it on the agenda.
That's fine.
I
And
can go back to the chat report.
Yeah, sure.
The
great.
chat report.
Okay, great.
So there was somebody from the Rainbow Commission and Diversity Task Group talking about bullying. They would like to see more training on more effective strategies for coping with bullying, and the best training is active bystander training. So they are have been working on it as an after-school club activity. Quabbin Mediation is going to do a Train the Trainer program. They've got support from the Rainbow Commission, Diversity Task Group, Human Rights. AEF might be funding some money, and they needed a district sponsor, so I think we directed them to Dr. McNeil, and hopefully that connection has been made. It should be, again, they just, for the grant, they need for the AEF grant, they need a district sponsor, and they already have, I think, the group at the high school, right? As an after-school club?
Middle school.
Oh, maybe at the middle school, but at the other schools, they just need a little bit more district support for
Yeah.
that. Brooks Harrelson?
Brooks, yeah. Brooks Harrelson.
Yeah. I think he emailed you and Sarah Bird, but is she still out? I don't know. The second parent was about the policy on part-time schooling. It's an issue that's come up before. She would like there to be rules and a process for homeschooled students that do want to enroll part-time. Right now, it's different principals give out different information. There's no process for submitting a request to do this. Somebody said they were turned down because the district doesn't receive Chapter 70 funding for part-time students, which is correct, but is not does not seem like the correct reason to turn somebody down based on what you've said.
That ever was given as a reason.
Well, somebody said that she was sitting with us, and she said she heard somebody was told that, so I don't know. So anyways, it does seem like there should probably be a written process for, at least an area on the website, if you want to enroll, if you're homeschooling and you want to enroll part-time, this is who you contact and how we'll make the decision. And that was it. There was another woman who raised a concern that she's going to work with the school principal on.
That's great. That sounds like it was really valuable. Sometimes,
It was 3 people, but it was,
Yeah.
it was, yeah. It was,
yeah, good.
Okay. So, curriculum. Mr. Thielman.
No report. We favor a vote at some point on the start time.
Facilities.
At some point, we want to vote.
Mr. Hayner.
Nothing at this time on facilities.
Policy.
The MASC has a posted policy manual up, which is being debugged of the last couple of bugs in terms of the internal links. I don't know if everybody else got I'll send out the link to the,
That'd be great.
to everybody else, or I'll send it to Karen, who'll send it out to everybody else to maintain our proper procedures. But there are a couple of linky things that aren't quite working right, but it's all up there.
great.
Can I just check on, remember the Community Relations Subcommittee forwarded the after-school policy? Have you guys had a meeting and talked about that?
Yes,
Right.
so I found that email. I wanted to check what got into the policy to see what else is left to be possibly changed.
Yeah.
So now that the policy is available, I will do that.
So, I mean, actually, that, we don't have, we can get a report without having this in the policy, right? So one of the ideas was that, Dr. Brady, that every spring we get a report of how many people are on each waiting list at each school
For the after-school
for after
program.
school, yeah.
Put it in
Yeah.
policy. then
I'm
it's
pretty
just-
sure that made it in the policy.
Yeah, I think that's a main.
So that was one of the main things that we wanted to see, right? To see an annual report of how many students are in each program, and then how many students are on the waiting list.
I think, right, so if you put in the policy, it just becomes an automatic part.
Yes, I know. But but if it doesn't, timing-wise, doesn't get there right now, we could still get this.
Well, they can give us that information.
Yeah.
All right, so the Policies Committee is going to follow up on this at some point.
Yes, the other part was about the Lexington language, about sharing classrooms, encouraging the sharing of classrooms.
That was in there? That was in there?
No, it was about asking for a space analysis.
No, it's just that, I don't know about that. All that I wrote in
Yeah.
that policy was a report.
Yeah,
Yes,
It's all the-
that should be in policy.
yeah.
There was another policy we had discussed in Lexington.
Excess space report.
Yeah, we didn't go to that.
Okay.
So but the new updated policy doesn't contain that language.
He thinks it does.
We don't know.
I don't know.
He
We'll
does- he
see.
thinks it
I will
does,
check
so
and
we'll-
let you know.
Karen will forward it to everybody,
Yeah,
so
we'll
you'll be
check,
able to
we'll
look,
check.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Legal services.
I spoke to the superintendent yesterday. She's going to provide the additional information for Mr. Thielman and I to put together the report, hopefully soon.
Okay. Building committee, we've heard from Gibbs.
Nothing.
And liaison reports and announcements. Human Rights Commission opening.
Oh, yes, there is an opening. No, so there was a recent, so there's this question, there's an opening recently. We also have a bunch of people who are up for renewal this spring. And so one question is, how do we handle it? Do we want to try to fill that opening now? Do we want to do that as part of a process whereby we sort of solicit, because we don't actually have to automatically renew people, right, when their term expires. So we can sort of solicit people to come up and then make an analysis of who we're going to appoint for the next round, rather than, and have an opening, for a couple months.
Okay.
So that's one
Mr.
question.
Schlickman.
Yeah.
I'd say that unless there's, I don't want to throw people off the committee if they're
No,
attending regularly.
I'm not saying that.
Well, I'm just making the opposite argument. so that if we have somebody who's on the committee who's our appointee and they're attending meetings regularly and the minutes are reflective of active participation, let them come in and say hello and do a report, and we can reappoint them. If there's a vacancy, of course, we should go through a thorough process to solicit volunteers for our member. That's the way I'd look at it.
Okay. So we have a vacancy.
So we have a vacancy, so we probably should advertise it, and then we'll have a meeting, our next community relations meeting, we'll go through those.
Okay.
We have sort of a process now established of how we make those decisions, so it should be a little easier, hopefully.
Do you want me to post it, or do you want to discuss it?
Yeah, let's post it.
Give us
Right, since
by
like the
date?
consensus.
by a certain date?
You might want to even wait till after the vacation and then post it and have it be due 2 weeks later. Yeah, because right now people may be,
Oh, yeah.
their mind is on vacation.
Okay. Mr. Hayner.
I'd like to take this moment to commend the third grade teachers and students from Stratton. They participated in a mock town meeting today, presented 3 articles, 2 passed and 1 failed. The vending machine in the public schools, even though they were healthy snacks, did not pass. The other 2 did pass. I would also like to...
What were the other 2?
Thank you. One is for putting solar panels on all the roofs of the public buildings in the town that do not have them at this time. And the other one was provide more trash cans with lids for both trash and for recycle, separate ones for recycle throughout the town as well.
Yeah,
They both passed. The students did a lot of work and research. They had specific numbers on the money saved on solar panels and things. They were very impressive. And there are several students who are, it looks like they may be coming forward to speak at town meeting itself to talk about recycle on the styrofoam, as guests, which I think is wonderful. The other thing I'd like to do is take this time to thank all the community members that supported the 3 crazy, including me, Rotary members who went into the ocean this past Saturday. We raised over $3,000 for polio. So thank you all. Thank you.
So I just wanted to mention the Trivia Bee is coming up on March 17th.
What was it? What's it called?
Trivia Bee,
Oh.
the Arlington Education Foundation Trivia Bee. Last year, I said I didn't want to be involved because I'm not very good, and then I was roped into another team, and then I won. So it was mostly Joe Curo.
So now you can redeem yourself.
So I can redeem. So if anybody wants me, they can have me, but they don't have to take me. So, but anyway, I think we should field
It's
the team.
Valentine's Day, so I'm not going to say I want you, but I would
No,
love
we
to be on the
should
team with
field
you.
the team. I knew some of those questions last time. I'm not generally good at trivia, so I just got lucked out.
We got beat early.
I just lucked out those times, so.
We were defeated.
I am committed that day to the children's room, but I'd just like to state, it doesn't always have to be a school committee member, so administration doesn't have to duck it as well.
No, but the superintendent's
The
suggested.
superintendent
I'm not
is
talking to the
there.
superintendent, there were several other members of the administration sitting on that side of the room.
So anyway, I just wanted to mention, that people should think about whether they're free and whether they'd want to be involved.
It is
I
St. Patrick's.
volunteered to play
What?
again.
It is St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
So you may agree.
But we shouldn't drink early.
Only making a statement.
Okay. Any other announcements?
We get punchy at the end of the
No. Okay. So at this point, we're going to go into executive session. Do we need to return? No. Okay. So this is our second executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union and/or non-union personnel or contract negotiations with union and/or non-union, in which if held in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect. To conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, in which if held in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect. Collective bargaining may also be conducted, and we will exit just to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Mr.
Aye.
Hayner?
Aye.
Morgan?
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye.
I said aye.
So that's
6 ayes and a
unanimous.
yes.